My name is Nate. This is attempt number 2 to get this recorded. Hopefully it'll go well. But this is Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. And I want to talk about a passage that is very familiar. In fact, most of us are pretty comfortable with this passage in the sense that we're comfortable with the implications, the idea behind it. We're okay with being the salt of the earth. This is Matthew 5:13. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out, and trampled underfoot by men. I'll read that again. Matthew 5:13. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. Why is this verse important? Well, basically it says that the Church of Jesus Christ is salt. Now, salt in this, this parallel that Jesus takes about what the church is, to try and explain to us simple-minded folk what the church is about and what it is. So we're supposed to make things taste better in the earth. We're supposed to make the earth more savory, a better place to be in. And we're supposed to preserve the earth. Our presence here in the earth is supposed to be able to continue and protect life on the earth. But the question that I want to take up is not whether we are the salt of the earth or what it means that we are the salt of the earth, but rather, what does it mean for the salt to become tasteless? And let's be real clear, Jesus is not talking about table salt. He's talking about the Church of Jesus Christ. He says, what happens if this salt becomes tasteless? Now, salt in this perspective is basically granules that are harvested from rocks, and sometimes the quality of this granule stuff was not so good. And so the only thing that you could do with that is throw it out, and it would be basically, just sand for people to be able to walk on. And that is basically worthless. And Jesus is saying that it's possible that the Church of Jesus Christ could become like that. He says, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything. Can you hear the Lord Jesus saying this? That it's possible for the church not to be good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. Is that not a very scary passage? Now think about this. This has actually kind of been typified several times in church history. Several times in church history, God has thrown out the people of God from his presence. You think about the invasion of Assyria into the northern kingdom of Israel. You think about the invasion of Babylon into the kingdom of Judea. And all these things took place as a result of their sins, as a judgment. And in those times, God spoke very clearly about why this happened. It was not happenstance. It was the clear judgment of God against sin. And my worry and concern is that no one has taken Jesus so seriously that they believe that the church today could be completely worthless. But in all honesty, before God, I believe that the institutional church as it exists today is this worthless salt. And the scary implication of that is that it's not just that it's not good for anything. It's that except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. Now, people have been talking about persecution coming on the West for a long time. And for a long time, Christianity had something of a stronghold in the West, where we could practice our faith freely without worry of persecution. But that door is likely closing very quickly. And very likely, we will experience a type of what Jesus described in Matthew 24. And Matthew 24, the type was Jerusalem being surrounded by the Romans, and the Romans desecrating the temple of Yahweh. And it is very likely that the Church of Jesus Christ is in the midst of that level of persecution, or should I say judgment, by the Most High God. Jesus is very clear here. One of the things I never took seriously about this passage is the fact that it's not just cool that we preserve and we make things taste better. The real, scary thing about this passage is the idea that we could become that granule that's harvested and it's just not good for anything. You can't salt your meat with it to preserve it. You can't make your eggs taste better. It's not good for anything. You don't keep it around. God will not keep a church that's worthless hanging out. So I'd encourage you to take this passage very carefully and pray over and think over what it might mean for the contemporary church today. It's not for nothing that Jesus says this. It's not an empty threat. And don't think that just because he says if, just because it's a hypothetical, doesn't mean that that's not possible. Look at what happened with the Church of Rome over the Middle Ages. It was once the church, not to mention a true church, and it became completely worthless. God cast it out of his presence in terms of sound doctrine and orthodoxy. So today is the day of salvation. Always be testing everything and holding fast to what is good. If I've spoken a word that sounds a little out there, then please test this in prayer and in the Word. And ask yourself the question, what is the Church of Jesus Christ today actually worth? What is it actually accomplishing? Because when I look at the church, I see sin. I see wickedness. I see religious activity without the power of God. And that's not something that I would commend for anyone. And the irony is that all they really have behind them is the power of human authority and the power of human organization. And that may be passing away very quickly.